Okay guys, and what I want to do in this video is try to expand upon the very simplistic model that we had set up in the previous one. So we're still talking about national income, of course, and we're talking about the second video in the mini-series on the circular flow of income. Okay, so we had already said in the last video that there was Irish firms and Irish households. Irish households spent money on the stuff that firms made. They buy stuff off firms, and then firms make money from the household expenditure. That expenditure on their stuff, on their output, is income to firms, and then from this income they pay the factors of production that is owned by the Irish households. So again, the circular flow of income, okay, we're tracing money around the economy. Now, we said in the previous video that the more that is spent, okay, the more that aggregate demand increases by, and that's the demand for all goods and services produced in the domestic economy at different price levels, but don't worry about that. We'll define it properly in the later subunit. That would incentivize firms to produce more. So if this increases, well then firms are like, oh, I can make a greater profit than I currently am if I produce more and more goods and services, because more and more people want to buy that stuff from me. If that's true, if every single household starts spending more and more in the domestic economy, that means that firms have a greater financial incentive to produce more and more goods and services. They produce those goods and services, and therefore we're all richer. And how do we see that? Well, we see that as evidenced by the increase in payment to Irish households from these firms, because they're going to need to hire more workers, and then if they're making more profit, that's more money going into the entrepreneur's house. If they're hiring more workers, that's more money going into the owners of labour, the workers' houses. If they are setting up new businesses, that's more rent going to the land, and there's more interest going to the owners of land, and more interest going to the bank, and they're owned by Irish households. But the thing is, nobody spends all their money. Okay, nobody spent. Well, I would hope not. Anyway, a very few, very small, unfortunate few, spend all their money as soon as they earn it. What some, or at least a portion of the income of households is, what's done with that is that it is saved in a financial institution. And the question that I would pose to you, and that I would hope you would be able to answer, is that, well, do the banks just say, oh, Daddy, look at how much money we have in our vaults, aren't we fantastic, and dance around it? Well, they may do that. I don't know how crazy the parties get in the bank. But what I'm saying is most likely, really what they absolutely do once they've all stopped partying, is that they will lend that money out to firms. And again, I'm just using the Irish example. Okay, instead of Irish, insert your nationality there, okay, in terms of investment. Now, I want to be very clear what investment is. Investment is the production or purchase of capital goods. Okay, now, again, we're only assuming Irish firms, Irish households, and financial institution now. There's only a bank if you want, okay? And what we mean by investment is this. As I've already said, the production or purchase of capital goods. But what I mean by that is a firm, a budding entrepreneur will go to the bank, okay, and say, I have an idea for a business. I'm going to make this new, tracksuit or whatever. It's completely irrelevant. But I need a factory, so I need sewing machines, I need to buy the building, and so on and so forth. All of that is capital, something man-made which is used in the production of goods and services. And investment is the production or purchase of capital goods. So what I want you to see is not all of the household's income is going back to the firms. Some of it is not going to the firms. Some of it is being diverted away from the firms into a financial institution. Okay, so that's reducing the spending on the output of firms, right? But what this financial institution does, and particularly during normal working conditions of an economy, so I don't mean like during a recession or a depression or something like that, but they will take this money and they will lend it out to either current entrepreneurs that want to expand, i.e. use that money to build more capital. And what do they, how does that translate into more capital in the economy? Well, some Irish firms are producing these machines. Some Irish firms are producing these equipment. Some Irish firms are producing these buildings. All of that is capital, anything that is man-made, which is used in the production of goods and services. And that's what the investment is, which is spending on capital. Okay, so what this investment is doing is increasing the productive capacity of our economy. So eventually, if the economy is working during what are, I suppose, one could call normal parameters, or at least not during a recession, we would find that the productive capacity of the Irish economy as a result of this investment is causing it to increase. We can now are in a position to make more and more goods and services. But they'll only produce those extra goods and services if enough spending goes to them. So what I want you to see is some of the spending has been diverted away in the form of savings. And the definition of savings is that portion of income which is not spent. But it's only not spent by the owners of those savings, the households per se, because then what will happen is that bank will lend it out to other Irish households, okay, and they will purchase or produce capital goods with a view to try to make goods and services for people that they want to spend their money on. And if enough people want to spend their money and do spend their money on their output, well, then the households will start to receive more and more payment for the supply of those factors of production. So I want you to see that savings initially reduces the flow of income from households to firms, but the bank lends out that money in the form of investment, and that increases the flow of income or spending on the output of Irish firms. And that's very important. So what I would ask you to do, guys, is to draw this diagram. And what I mean by that now is that you have just added this one extra element to the diagram that you were already drawing, or already have drawn from the previous video. And once you have done that, I'd pause the video now just so you can draw the diagram. And once you have done that, press play and we'll move on and see if you can answer these questions. So what I've done now is I've just put a list of 4 questions. Don't worry, I'll go through the answers, okay? This is not like any form of IB kind of question per se. All we're saying is, do you understand what's going on? And if you do understand what's going on, then you will be able to up-level this understanding to the IB relevant material. So I'd ask you, you've drawn the diagram hopefully, and now you can see these questions. Pause the video here. Once you have answers, then I would like you to press play and see what I have to say about it. Okay, guys, well, I do hope you've had a chance to answer those questions. Now, the first thing is, how does the circular flow of income diagram say financial institutions, and I think that should be affect, but anyway, the economy's demand for goods and services, right? All they do is a rather random question, potentially, okay? They provide a place for households to store their extra money and an institution for firms to go to gain access to other people's money. So what a financial institution is, something like a bank, it's a place for people that have more money than they currently want to use to store it, savings, that portion of income which is not spent, and a place for people that have less money than they want to use, borrowers, investors, to gain access to that. Okay? It matches those with too much money to those with not enough. Okay? And what I mean by too much money is more money than they want to currently use. Okay? So the savers provide the funds for investors. Very important. Now, again, we're assuming a ceteris paribus relationship here. If people started to save more money, a higher proportion of their income, okay, so they were earning €100 a week and they were saving, let's say, €30 or 30%. Now, nothing else has changed and they're saving 40%. What do you think will happen to national income? This is very important. Because if nothing else changes, the total demand for all goods and services, all domestically produced goods and services, all Irish produced goods and services will fall. Okay, so if people started to save more, less goods and services will be bought from firms. Okay, it's ceteris paribus, that makes sense, yeah. No, we have this €100, we were saving 30 and spending 70, now we're saving 40 and spending 60. And if everybody in the total economy does that, okay, well then total or aggregate demand for goods being produced falls. So if there's less demand, if people want to buy less goods and services from Irish firms, this means that firms would have less demand for their output. This means that firm would reduce, I'll try to speak English now, this means that firms would reduce the amount of goods and services they produce. Why? Well, they're not selling the same amount that they were previously. So they only make money if they sell it. If the total demand for all goods and services they produce falls, well, they're going to reduce the amount of goods and services they produce because they can only make a profit if they sell the goods. And if they continue to produce at the exact same level that they were, their warehouses would just be filling up with stock that they're not selling. Now, how do they reduce that the quantity? Well, obviously they can just say stop making it, but invariably that means they'll fire people, they'll fire workers, they'll reduce the orders from their suppliers, so therefore their suppliers will fire workers. So a reduction in aggregate demand and the total demand for Irish produced goods could lead to a reduction in employment and an increase in unemployment. If we're producing less, and I mean we as an economy, a domestic economy, all of our firms are producing less goods and services, that means national income will fall. That's the definition of a reduction in real national income. A reduction in the production of goods and services. Now, again, a ceteris paribus relationship. Like, we're assuming that nothing else has changed other than number 3. So we were back at normal and now we're on number 3. If the demand for loans was greater and as such banks lent out more, what do you think will happen to national income? Well, if banks are lending out more, why are they lending this money out? They're lending this money out to current and budding entrepreneurs in order to buy capital in order to set up their business. Well, if that has increased and nothing else has changed in the economy, what we're saying is the demand for the goods and services that firms have produced increases. So if banks lend out more goods and services would be bought from firms. Well, where did they get? You have to ask why. Well, where are these people that are borrowing the money from the bank getting the new capital equipment in the buildings? They're going to Irish firms in this case, or domestic firms in general, and saying, can you build this building for me? Can you make this machine for me? That's what they're doing. That's the investment. That's the production or purchase of capital goods. Okay, so more stuff, because some Irish firms or some domestic firms are producing capital goods. So now more entrepreneurs are going to these firms or firms like this and saying, can you produce more goods and services for me in the terms in the form of capital? And they're saying, yes, absolutely. So how do they do this? Well, if enough people do this, if enough entrepreneurs do this, they borrow money off the bank and they go to domestic firms to say, can you produce this for me? And they say yes. Well, then how are the new firms going to meet this increase in demand for the capital goods? Well, what they're going to do is have to hire more workers and more capital goods will be produced. If they hire more workers, there is greater money coming into that firm, and as such, there's greater money going into Irish households or into domestic households in general. So therefore, the total amount of income going to Irish households increases, and that causes more to be spent on Irish firms, on the output of Irish firms. So this means the firms would have greater demand for their output. This means the firms would increase the amount of goods and services they produced by hiring more workers. And this means that national income would, I'm going to fix this right now, would rise. Okay, I do apologize. Would rise. Okay, that's very, very true. Now, is saving a good thing for the economy or a bad thing for the economy? Well, it depends. Like all great answers in economics, it depends. That's why you never write down this definitely will happen. And I think if you watch my videos, you'll see that a lot of the time I correct myself and I try to say this may happen or this could occur. Okay, well, savings means that less money is spent on firms' output. This causes firms to produce less goods and services in the short run. Very, very true. But where does this money go? And particularly assuming if it goes into financial institutions, well, they will only make a profit and they're self-serving and self-interested. They have enlightened self-interest, okay? And the idea there is that they will try to lend out money to people that they believe are in a position to earn more from their borrowings and as such be able to pay back the loan. So savings provides the funds for investment. And again, forgive me, but what's the definition of investment? The production or purchase of capital goods. If we add more capital to the economy, that means we can produce more. If we produce more, that means we can consume more. If we can consume more, that means that we are richer. Okay? So savings provides the funds for investment. The more that is saved, the more capital that is added to the economy, meaning that the more that can be produced in the future and therefore we're richer. The answer, the typical kind of low-level answer that you guys should be thinking about now at the start of your study of economics is that savings is a bad thing in the short run because it reduces the demand for output by firms and can lead to a drop in national income. But what it can also do is create the situation through increased capital accumulation in the economy where more can be produced in the future. So there's an opportunity cost in terms of current consumption for greater consumption in the future. Guys, I really, really hope this helped. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I very much hope to see you in the next one.